His BYU Sports Nation debut is NFL alumnus, former BYU quarterback, BYU offensive coordinator. He is the Dominator. Brandon Doman joins us on the Deseret First Credit Union Hotline. Brandon, great to have you on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Looking back at one of the more memorable seasons in BYU football history, how would you describe the 2001 campaign for the Cougars?
Oh, gosh. It was about as fun of a year as I've ever had in my life. And looking back at that, the enthusiasm that we had with the new football coach, with Gary Crowton coming in, I think coupled with a ton of good seniors. I think we had like 8 guys on that team that played in the NFL. So we were just kind of perfect storm. We had all the right things in place, all the right players in place, and an exciting offense, and it was fun.
Let's rewind back to the end of your junior season. So obviously Lavelle Edwards Stadium is named, and you get your first start, and you beat New Mexico, and then you go to Utah, and you beat Utah in miraculous fashion, and Lavelle retires. Just this amazing, end to Lavelle's career, and you're the starting quarterback there. Then he retires, and then it's this new guy, the OC from the Bears, Gary Crowton, and all of a sudden you score 70 in the first game, and then it starts 12 straight wins. Take us back to kind of what you felt as you took on the starting role at the end of Lavelle's last 2 games, and then into this new era.
Well, when I started for those last 2 games, it was because the 2 guys in front of me got hurt. Brent Ingeman had gotten hurt, Charlie Peterson had gotten hurt. So even though we had won those 2 games and I had been the starter, nobody gave me the indication that I was the starter going into the next season. It was, hey, these guys are going to get healthy, and we'll have a little quarterback challenge again and see who's going to be the guy. And although I felt extremely confident going in, different than I did ever before in my career there, I think that they felt an allegiance to all the quarterbacks to give us a chance to compete, and they did in spring ball. And I was grateful that I had the opportunity to start. So that was the first of it, just never really feeling like, even though I had won, that it was my job. So I think it kept me hungry, kept me fighting and battling for the job. Number 2, this offensive coordinator from the Chicago Bears that none of us knew, and Gary Crowton, came in with an entirely new offense. Nothing was the same. No terminology, not one formation. The structure of the offense was different. The way that the pass concepts and route concepts were different. Pass protection was different. So we kind of freaked out at the beginning because we did not understand a word he was saying. And he's a cerebral guy anyways. And so he would get going so fast, and he would want to be so far ahead of where we were, that our spring ball that year was a disaster. We could not move the football. We were throwing picks all over the place. We just couldn't grab a hold of what he was trying to get us to do. And I remember getting done with spring ball thinking, this is not good. We are not going to be a good football team. And I went and grabbed him after spring ball. And I said, Coach, I don't know what's going on, but I don't know why you're calling what you're calling. I don't understand a few of these concepts. And so there's got to be a way for me to get on the same page with you. And I went and found every minute I could find with him inside the rule book, and sat down in his office, got him in front of the whiteboard, got him in front of and he was so bright. And if there's one thing I can say about Gary Crowton, is that that guy understands football. And I learned so much in about a 3-month period of time before we got to 2-a-days. I started getting an idea as to why he was doing what he was doing, and it started clicking. And had we not spent that time in the spring and summer, I think it would have been a disaster. But we kind of figured it out through the summertime, and we're ready to go.
When were you given the starting job then?
Not till 2-a-days. Yeah, not till fall camp. So in August, he finally told everybody that I was the starter, and I started getting the majority of the reps. But I think all of us were willing to work hard and spend the time. Charlie Peterson and I were both seniors, pretty motivated to make a run for it. And Charlie ended up becoming the backup. Brett had some surgery and didn't quite get healthy. In fact, he might have even redshirted. I can't remember, but it was Charlie and I that took that season on. And I think that helped. You had 2 quarterbacks, a starter and a backup, that were starter caliber guys. and we could lead the off-season workouts and the off-season offensive stuff we were doing. So like I said, it was a perfect storm. We had all the right leadership and components in place to be successful, and Charlie played a big role in that.
Brandon Doman with us on BYU Sports Nation. This is 2001 BYU football, the Reviewables. Given the turbulent spring football scenario and not exactly knowing what was going on over the summer and during voluntary workouts, at what point, Brandon, did you feel like, okay, this team is actually going to be pretty good?
Well, Gary, Coach Crowton, we got into fall camp, and I could see that the coaches had installed a run game that I could execute. I knew that it would allow me to be an athlete. It would allow Luke Staley to be great. And when I could see that the run game was going to be a major component of what we were doing, coupled with a simplified version of the offense that we could execute, I could see it. The moment we got going in 2 days, we took off. And just some of the quarterback run game stuff where we could do some speed option, zone read, that was really unheard of at that time. And now it's all you see. But we were really the first ones to do it to that level and that quantity. And to be able to, get the ball in Luke's hands in open field on some of the pitches, it's just a speed option and pitch him the football and let him run was new. And it was really, really fun to watch that guy play. He was so good.
He doesn't have the most yards in BYU history, but I call him the number one running back, the GOAT in running backs in BYU history. I just think what he did in 01 just cements him there. And certainly his injury against Mississippi State changes things. So I want to ask you, at that point, obviously, and I want to dive into a ton here, but you're 11-0. You just beat Utah, an amazing comeback at the end. 9-11 rescheduled game at Mississippi State, walk-off winner there, but Luke breaks his leg. What was going through your mind and the team's mind collectively as you still had a good Hawaii team on the road thinking, okay, we're 12-0 and we still want a shot at this? And I guess the Fiesta Bowl had reached out and said, you're not going to be in this, and Luke's injured. Yeah. What was that like?
Well, when you look at Luke's injury, we were cementing the win. We had to kick a field goal, and we had marched the ball down the field. And we handed it off to him one last time up through the middle. It was a nice run. But it was one last run to kind of put us in a position to kick that field goal and end the game. And that's when he got hurt. You just kick yourself wishing you could have that play back and to keep him healthy. I think had Luke Staley been healthy, we would have played in the Fiesta Bowl. I think they would have taken us. He had the Doak Walker Award winner. I think the fact that he was hurt gave the committee a reason to, just another reason to not keep BYU in it. The fact that we still had one more football game left with some injuries, I think left some gray area for the committee to try, what if BYU loses that game? And so there was a lot of gray area there. But I do think had Luke been healthy, we would have been given the bid to go. And so that was a little disheartening, being undefeated and ranked as high as we were. We would have loved to. I think we would have played Oregon. Joey Harrington was one of the first round draft pick quarterbacks, and for me personally, that would have been nice. I would have loved to have played against him and play those guys. But yeah, it was a little disheartening to have Luke go down and then not get that bid. It was hard.
How did you manage playing with the pressure of an undefeated season potentially hanging in the balance, knowing that your star running back was out and you had to go to Hawaii?
Well, there was so much about that Hawaii trip that was hard. It was so late in the year. We were hammered. We had like 4 or 5 come from behind games that year, Mississippi State being one of them, Utah being the other one right before that. And we had been battle tested, but we were wounded. And having to go back out on whatever it was, December 8th to play Hawaii. We flew out there. We weren't there long. We got to the stadium late. There were so many things that just wore us out. And by the time we got in that stadium to play, we were pretty worn out. I broke my ribs like second series of that game. And it just was, we limped to the finish line for sure. It's hard.
I've never heard the broken ribs thing. So second series, you break your ribs and you keep going?
Yeah, I was. They had a free safety that was a really, really good player, and he hit like a lead ball. And the second series, I just kept the ball and I ran up the right side of our line, and I went. I was kind of going down, and he speared me right in the back of my ribs, and it fractured my left bottom rib, and anyways, it was hurting me like crazy. I just kept playing. And then right before the half, I was diving into the end zone, and he hit me again. And I couldn't breathe. I jogged off. It was halftime. I jogged off in the locker room and went to the doctors and said, got to be some kind of a cortisone shot or something that take this pain away, because I didn't want to stop playing. And they did. They gave me a shot to see if it would numb the pain, but you can't, that was the most severe pain I'd felt. The rib fracture's hard. But that's how that happened.
That Hawaii trip just stunk. Good God. Good God.
Flying home was a miserable flight home.
Oh, terrible.
Yeah, I can imagine. Did anybody finish the season healthy on your team, Brandon?
Jeez.
Well, I remember watching Ryan Denny. His foot was so messed up that I look back at all the guys that were our top players, and there was something significantly wrong with every one of us by the time we got to the bowl game. Reno Mahe was hurt. Doug Jolly was always limping. Brett Kiesel and Ryan Denny. We had some great ones, but we were pretty banged up. Like I said, we were limping to the finish line pretty good that year.
Let's talk about the Utah game. So people remember Luke Staley's play, and I want to ask you about that in a second. But one of the bigger stories is Reno Mahe plays this with after removing his appendix. Tell us the story of how Reno didn't just play, but he had an amazing game in that one.
Well, I'll tell you what. It was Saturday after we had finished. I can't remember who we just finished playing. And I had just got done doing an interview with Channel 2. They used to have a little remote location in Provo back then, and it was just down on University Avenue. And I had come out of there at about, 11 o'clock at night after the game was done that night. And I'm driving past the hospital there, the Utah Valley Hospital, towards my apartment, which was down the road a little ways. And I get a phone call from our doctor at that time. And he said, Brandon, where are you? I said, well, I'm just driving past the hospital. He says, stop your car and come into the emergency room. I've got Reno Mahe in here with his appendix bursting. And he wants a blessing. So Reno's a pretty faithful guy, and I hurried and parked my car. No joke. I parked it, ran in there, and there he was laying there. And he's like, I need a blessing. And so we hurried and gave him a blessing, and he whether he should or shouldn't have been playing the following Saturday. I'll let you guys be the judge of that. I'm grateful 20 years later, but he played, and had we not had him in that game, he made a couple big-time football plays. And gosh, I love that guy. He was such a warrior. But yeah, 5-7 days later, he played in the Utah game. 5
catches, 94 yards, and a touchdown.
Unbelievable stuff. Brandon Doman with us on BYU Sports Nation, the Reviewables. Let's finish with this, Brandon. The iconic moment for most BYU fans from that 2001 season is the pitch to Luke Staley as he's running down the sideline into the end zone, which ultimately resulted in the game-winning touchdown in that huge rivalry game. Take us to your perspective on that play. What did you see? What did you feel? And what do you remember?
One of the things that we did well that year was the coaches allowed me to check into run plays. And I gave them some heartburn a lot of times because we'd have a great pass play dialed up, and I would see something in the run game, and I would check to it. But in that particular case, they were running a type of defense that left them vulnerable to the boundary, to the weak side of the field, which meant they only had 3 guys there: a defensive tackle, a defensive end, and a linebacker. They had inverted the safety to the strong side of the field over the top of Reno. And so we checked into a weak side speed option. And their defensive end was one-on-one with me and Luke. And our receivers were so good at blocking downfield. If I remember right, it might have been Soren Halliday or Andrew Ord. I can't remember which one. But after, checking to that and getting the defensive end to commit to me, I had to kind of do a little dance move to get him to stay with me, because I knew I wasn't going to score. So if I could get him to stay with me and get the ball in Luke's hands, there was a darn good chance that something spectacular would happen. And sure enough, he committed to me, and we pitched it to Luke, and our receivers and our line, everybody blocked like they did that year. They were so good at it. And he took off down the sideline. And I've been in that stadium hundreds of times, and I've never felt that electrifying of a feeling in that stadium ever in my life. It was an unbelievable experience to see him go down that sideline that way. So, yeah, probably my greatest, one of my top 2 or 3 moments by far.
Brandon, outstanding stuff. We appreciate you taking time with us to review a team that deserves the attention, and hopefully your rib is feeling better these days.
Yeah, it's just my back. It's fine. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Thanks for highlighting our team. That was a fun year with a bunch of great guys.
You got it, man. Thanks, Brandon.
Yeah.
Brandon Doman on the Deseret First Credit Union Hotline. Deseret First, you know why, we show how.